We are the transition between Bereshis and Noach. Sunday was the first day of Parshas Noach. And I'll just mention what I always like to say from the Rabbi, that he said whenever he was approached, what are you doing today? He says, I'm reading the newspaper. So he says, Rabbi is reading the newspaper? And he goes, I'm reading the Parshas Shavua. So everything that goes on in the world has to be connected to Torah. So we'll try to connect to some of the events that swirl around us. I want to speak a little bit about the creation of Chava, which is powerful. I want to speak a little bit about the transition between Adam, Noach, and Avram, which if you paid attention, the end of Bereshis, we mentioned the birth of Noah, the nevuah about Noah. What do we say about him? This will be our comfort person. He was actually a Messiah. He was anticipated as a Messiah. It was a prophecies about him. And Rashi says, what was his messianic contribution? Main, not the fact that he saved the world in the Teva. No. His main messianic contribution was that he taught people to use a plow. And that he had webbed fingers originally. And he was the first one born without webbed fingers. And therefore he could manipulate tools. And although we speak about Tubal Cain, who created weapons of war, that's also true. But that's what Chazal say. So Noach was an important person, Lagabe, man mastering the technology that he needed to be successful in his work. We see that the tools of technology were important. Noach would later need those tools to build the Teva. And then at the end of Parshas Noach, we speak about the birth of Avram. So it's almost as if what they call in Israel chafifa. We are transitioning between one to the other. The end of Bereshis contains a reference to Noah. The end of Noah contains a reference to the birth of Avram, and so on. Okay, there's Yitzchak, speaks about the birth of Rivka, and so on. That's why, just as an introduction to learning, going back to Bereshis, it's important to know that the Torah is a unified story and history and teaching, so that we connect in the concept of Chazal. Adam spells Aleph Daled Mem. Who does that stand for? Who does Aleph Daled Mem stand for? Could be Abraham, or Adam and Avraham, and then Dalet is David, and then Mem is Moshe. What's Chazal trying to tell us? That it's not disparate stories. If we believe in evolution at all, we believe in the evolution of spirituality. Okay? And that is the story. Hence, what does it say? David HaMelech received 70 years of life, just like Bibi celebrated his 70th birthday. And you can draw your own conclusions. 70 was the full term of David HaMelech's Malchus, and it terminated at age 70. Draw your own conclusions. But I think it's patently obvious. Yeah. Also, Rabbi Nachman says that when somebody has a lot of kavod, they have to be very careful. Because kavod in the human sense, kavod is a very, very dangerous commodity, because who does kavod ultimately belong to? It says in the Mishnah, last Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Kol shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Lo bara ela lichvodo, right? And we say every day in davening, Baruch Hashem, right? We speak about Hashem as kavod. So that means when you get a lot of kavod, you are actually aligning yourself with Hashem. You are closely bonded with Hashem. And that's a dangerous thing, because when are people most closely bonded to Hashem? We say that a person, when they pass away, Tehei neshama tzrura, should be bound up, b'tzrur ha'chayim. So by receiving a lot of kavod, you are binding yourself to Hashem, which may lead to Tehei Nishmato Tzrura B'Tzrur HaChaim. That's what Rabbi Nachman says. And the only way to avoid that is to be a conduit of Hashem's kavod. Because then Hashem, it's not that you're trying to go up in Himmel to be with Hashem, you're actually trying to draw kavod Hashem downward. That's a much safer position. So it's really not safe to receive any personal accolades that are not, let's put it this way, identifiably l'shem shamayim. So let's hope that he'll be all right. Now, so that explains why Adam gave 70 years to Mashiach. Why? Because, that's very nice, it's generous and everything, but after all, 70 years of life is not a small thing. Shivim Shana. So why did he give the day? So the answer is, according to this understanding, that he needed David to continue his spiritual evolution. If there's no David a Melech, there's no Adam. You understand? Adam, David, Mashiach. There's no Daled in the Adam. And he remains flawed and tainted and unable to complete his original mission, which was unfortunately due to the fact of the chet of Eitz Hadas Torah. So who's going to help out Adam? The only person who can help Adam reach his perfection is David and Mashiach. So of course he gave him 70 years, which represents a lifetime. Of course he gave him life, because who else is going to accomplish his tikkun, his own personal tikkun? In other words, like they say, it was personal. It wasn't an act of charity. It was personal. He needed it. Now, on that note, let's go to the Eitz Hadas Tova problem to begin with. Now, we know that actually, that Chava, Adam and the Nachash are the three primary characters there, and Chava had 3 reasons why she ate from the Eitz Hadas Tova. What were the reasons why? So, if we look in the Pasuk, it tells us that, a couple of questions. Number one, the Pasuk tells us that Hashem decided, Lo tov heyos adam levado. It's not good for Hashem, for man to be alone. Es elo ezer connecto. Okay? Now, so what does he do? So you would think he would go right away and create Chava. But what does Hashem do, actually?
Exactly back to back.
He creates him, right? Min ha'adama, kol chayas hasadeh, ves kol of hashamayim. He creates Adam, and then he starts bringing him all the animals. Wait a minute. You said to me you want Ezer Kenegdo, and the first step is Vayitzar Adonai Elohim min ha'adama, Hashem Elohim, Kol chayas hasada ves kol of hashamayim, all the animals and all the birds created in the 6th day after Adam was created. Vayavel Adam. He says Ma Yikrolo, and Rashi says Mazmi Ma Yikrolo. He says V'lo matzah Ezer Kenegdo. The purpose of Vayikrolo was a date. It was a shadchan. Hashem was acting as a shadchan. He says, Adam, I've got a lovely porcupine. Just a cup of coffee. Go try. Here's a nice alligator. Okay, so they have dental issues. But go out, sit down, have some fun. There's a lovely chimp.
What? There was a Mrs. Alligator and a Mrs. Chimp.
That's another problem.
But I thought that Adam had 2 sides to him, a male and female.
Excellent. So, yeah, that's another problem. So the first problem is, Rashi says, quoting Chazal, that any name that he called them, that was going to be their name. In other words, he studied them, he understood them, he got to their essence, he dated them. Rashi, quoting Chazal, says that he tried to marry them. He tried to make it his ben zug. But what happened? Didn't work. So when Hashem finally creates Chava, what does it say? It says, Hapam, now he's happy. He says, Zos Hapam, now, finally, this is a good day. This is someone I'm looking for, says Rashi in the name of the Gemara Yevama Staf Samach Gimel. Melamed Sheba Adam al Kol Behema B'chaya V'lo Niskara Daito Mihem. He had a relationship with every one of the animals, but he was not happy. Maybe a tissue, please. Why would Hashem put Adam through that? And some of them, Forshim, Maharal, and others, they're outraged. They said, what kind of business is that? we know that bestiality, chas v'shalom, is one of the big averos in the Torah. It's chayav misa, it's chayav skila. It's one of the worst of all offenses.
Yeah, let's put the AC on. I'll do it.
Amen.
So why in the world would HaKadosh Baruch Hu make Adam go through this problem? Secondly, how were they actually created? So there are two perushim in the Medrash. One is that she was created from an extra appendage, from a zanah, from an extra piece of flesh that was on the soul, that was on the body of Adam. It was removed, not ripped. We, according to Chazal, even though it says in the Torah, "Vayiven es hatzela," that does not mean Adam's rib, as is popularly thought. Rashi says it means mistara, one of his sides. Zehu she'amru shnei partsufim nivra'o. Medrash Rabbi says that they were built back to back with two faces. As it says, Achor v'kedem sartani. Now, Rashi doesn't quote that. Because you could say that they had two faces means they were Siamese twins. You could also learn that way. But Chazal go one step further. It's the Achor v'kedem sartani, front and back you created me, that they were back to back. And if that's the case, all HaKadosh Baruch Hu did was make what they call the Nisira. He separated them. And that's what it means by Vayiven es hatzela. He had to close in the wound. But there's another opinion. And that other opinion that we said is that he fashioned her out of a zanav, an appendage. Which is Rashi learning? I just read to you. Which is Rashi learning? Shezeu she'amru shnei partzufim nivro. Obviously, Rashi understands that the way that they were created was this way, with two faces back to back. That opinion in the Medrash. Wait a minute. He also says something else. One, a pasuk later. Vayiven. HaKadosh Baruch Hu built Chava. What do you built Chava? If you say that they were already fully complete, they just needed to be separated, what does it mean he built her? And Rashi goes on to say, Vayiven rachva milamata ukitzara milamala. Wide on the bottom, and what? Narrow on top. A woman is designed to be able to carry a child. So she should be able to, like a storehouse that is built wide at the bottom and then more narrow on top. So shelo yichbed ma'asa'o al kirosav, it should not be too much of a burden. Structurally, a woman is designed differently than a man, very differently, and in order to what? To accommodate child. Question: if they were created back to back, and everything was already complete, and now there's a reconstruction, isn't that a contradiction to Rashi? Rashi, on the one hand, is learning that they were created back to back, that she was already fully complete, just needed to be separated, just, tear on the dotted line. Or is it that it was a complete reconstruction? That seems to be the other opinion of the Medrash. Rashi, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So I once asked a prominent Rav, I said, is it possible that Rashi from one pasuk to the next might choose this Medrash even though it's in contradiction to the other Medrash? And he said to me, no, because it's a story that a 5-year-old, he's trying to answer questions that a 5-year-old would have. So a 5-year-old, if you tell them the story that they're created back to back and you just separated them, would not gloss over the fact that you're now building her from scratch. It has to be somewhat logical. Now you might argue the point. I said, well, maybe we have to assume that there's some sort of logical consistency within Rashi. If that's the case, what happens? So I'd like to suggest the following amazing thing. Amazing idea. Yes, they were created back to back in perfect symmetry. Okay, and how were they supposed to live and conduct themselves and reproduce? They had the ability to reproduce as a uniform, as one unit, okay? And wherever they went in complete unison. And they were not separated at all. That was the original plan. But then, after this episode, this debacle with the animals, Hashem changed his mind. Originally, man was supposed to be two partsufim. And that's the ideal. But like everything else, it's a spiritual evolution. We believe in evolution. Adam was not ready for the ultimate state. That's why they sinned to begin with. And now, having sinned, they weren't ready for the next issue, which is to be the caretaker of the garden, and therefore the caretaker of everything in the garden, which means to be the caregiver of all the animals, right? And that was going to be the original thing. There would be no Adam and Chava. There would have been just Adam Chava, that human entity, and they would have taken care of all the nice animals. People like dogs, people like horses.
They were separated because of the sin? No, the sin came.
So according to this understanding, Hashem first tried it out. He said, let's see if this dual-faced being will have happiness and satisfaction in giving, being the giver and maintainer of the garden of the animals. People love their horses, you know. Some people want to marry their horses. It's a big problem. I read an article recently that some spouses are accused of giving more attention to their dogs and their cats to each other. I'm sure that's not the case in this household. But there was supposed to be some sort of fulfillment of man through taking care of the world, and it wasn't working. Why not? Well, the experience of giving is only possible when one is evolved to the point that their own personal needs are met. Right? Adam needed to grow as a giver. And therefore, what did he need more than anything else? A receiver. And he also needed to receive. Because what does Chava give Adam more than anything else? It's quid pro quo. He gives her, right, life and sustenance. He gives her the raw material with which to create human beings. Okay? And she gives back to him human beings. And she also gives back to him what? Ezer ke nekdo. Zacha ezer. Lo zacha kenekdo. Zacha means to clear yourself up. Zach, shemen, zayit, zach. Clear oil. If he's got his act together, and if he's removed the sediments of his soul, then she'll be with him. But if he has work to do, if he has tshuva to do, then the woman's primary job is to let him know, either consciously or unconsciously, that he's not behaving. And a good wife is not the wife that says nothing. So, Eza Isha Hogenes Ha'oser Etzon Ba'ala. I heard once from Rabbi Breb, not Rabbi Breb, from one of the great Rabbi Volba. Rabbi Volba in his countries of Hasadim said that young coal guys come to him and say, I don't understand. My wife isn't doing what I tell her to do. Isn't it true? Isha Hogenes Tzarech Lasos Rason Ba'ala. He says, yeah, that's if you're doing what you need to do. If you're on the top of your game, you're learning and you're making her proud and you're caring for her and you're being compassionate and you're listening, then she'll go along with you. She'll give you some leeway. Rabbi Arish would say it like this. He said some of his Baal Tshuvas, run into marital problems right away because one partner became religious before the other partner, let's say. That's pretty typical. And so the husband is on fire and he wants to go daven with a minyan. His wife wants him home to help with the kids. Let's face it, it's dinner time or whatever it is. So she calls him up in the base medrash and says, I want you to come home. He goes, I've got to daven mincha. And he clicks down the phone. So Rabbi Arish overheard this and he walks in and he goes, go home. He says, what do you mean? I got to daven mincha. He said, listen, if you go home, then the next time, and you help her, and you show that you care, then the next time it comes to daven mincha, and you ask, can I go? She'll say, okay, go. But if you say, I'm going to daven mincha against her wishes, not only will she hate you, but she'll come to hate what? The person who commanded to daven. Chazal and Hashem. So you got to first take care of your business. So there's a giver, receiver job that was incomplete, that Adam, the created Adam together, had not yet earned that level. And therefore I'd like to suggest that Adam redesigned Chava for her role as receiver, giver. So he had to start all over again. Not start all over again. He took her, right? And in the area in which she was separated, in which she could have done whatever, at that point, he rebuilt her, not completely, but partially, so she would have the reproductive abilities alone, and that Adam would not. He created a situation where it would be male, female. That's what he created. Okay? Whereas the original being was non-gender. You go online today, and you try to get an airline ticket, which I did, and, no, my brother was and the gender, male, female, other, rather not say. Those are your four choices. Rather not say. Those are your four choices. I don't want like saying.
Yeah.
All right, maybe there's be more choices now. So I think that is the perush that will explain best. It's not a contradiction. Rashi's not contradicting himself. He's saying the absolute truth. They were created, part Zufim, and he also redesigned part of Chava so that man could maximize the ability together with his other. And that's why it's kinegdo, which means in response to, quid pro quo. She will give him the feedback, and also she will give him the rewards if he's worthy. The rewards of children, the rewards of everything. You know, bracha and atzlacha and bracha. Chazal tell us, the Gemara Hulin, that a parnasa of a person is essentially emanates from the soul of his wife. The Gemara says that if you want to become rich, honor your wife. And then the Zohar says it's that the actual wealth, which is wealth has a spiritual root, comes when your wife is happy. Happy with her lot, happy with you, and her soul is in a shining state, is in a happy state, is filled with light. And or, you know what the word or means in English? O-R-E? What is or? Iron ore or gold or silver or, it's not a mistake. Or, and you know, things like gold shine, right? They reflect light, they conduct electricity, they are powerful. The interior of the Beis HaMikdash was all, Kodesh Kodashim was all gold. All wood overlaid with gold. It was a tremendous conductor of energy. The more the husband is doing the right thing, the more energy and light his efforts can receive. And that's what Chazal tells. Now, I mean, of course, you always ask the question of Tzaddik Varala, Rosh Katolo, there's always exceptions, but in principle, the Gadol, as they say, that's the idea. Now, I want to go, let me go forward to go backwards. The first day of Noah, which we are in this week, it was the killing of Baghdadi, correct? Who was Baghdadi? Baghdadi was the head of the Islamic State, which under our good friend Obama became a major world power that he didn't think he could take on. And what were they doing? What were they known for doing?
Terrorism.
But specifically what? What was the horrible things that they did? The most horrible things they did? Beheadings, right? And who were victims? A couple of Jews. I think Daniel, what was his name? Daniel Pearl? Was he mentioned? Was he mentioned by Donald Trump? Why wasn't he? It's hard to know. Maybe I don't know why he was left out. I don't know why. Maybe because he worked for the Washington Post. It's this Mr. Sotloff, who passed away, was a little bit of a Balchuva, was a little bit of a fun person. Did you know that? Terrible tragedy. You know, fragrant disrespect for human life and even for what we call basic Selameliki, basic humanity was not honored. There's one thing to fly a plane into a building. You know, it's still somewhat abstract. A plane, a building, even though it was horribly graphic. When you take a human being in front of you, right, and ruthlessly and heartlessly behead them, which is a worse act? You know, it's obviously, you know, to the core of insensitivity in you.
He wasn't the first, there was a kamikaze, Japanese
Yes,
kamikaze.
many. It's not an unusual thing for a person to give their life for a cause. That's very typical. That's why, according to some, I once heard that the episode of Avram Avinu, we just started speaking about him in the end of this week's parsha, is that he was thrown into a fiery furnace, much like they threw this Jordanian pilot. They put him in a cage and roasted him like a marshmallow, right? And that was mentioned. And he was thrown into a kivshan ha'esh, and he came out alive. Much like later generations, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah would emerge from a kivshan ha'esh. But no, Nimrod's the one who threw him in.
Yeah.
Nimrod was one he couldn't. That's why his name is Vayibi Me Amrapel, Amar Pel. That's what he threw him in. Now,
Daniel in the lion's den.
Daniel, right. So we have that episode of Avram's life is not recorded in the Torah. There's not one pasuk about it. You would think, you know, we get in the book of Daniel quite an elaborate depiction of Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah being thrown into a kivshan ha'esh and how they survive and how they emerge. And you know, we get all the information. Why is it that by Avram Avinu we don't get any information about that story? So some suggested, because it's typical to be burned. People always die for a cause, or always willing to give their life for a cause. But to live for a cause, that's much different. And that's much different. And to take his own son and slay it by his own hand, that's what Avram was asked to do. It's a much harder test. It's almost not even a test to give your life. Because some people say, I hate my life anyway, I'll go out in grand style. Like all these guys in Gaza, they say, we'll make money. Get a permanent job. No, they don't feel like they can provide for their families. It's a simple solution. I'll go out, I'll kill somebody, I'll get killed, and my whole family, I'll provide for them. I'll be a hero for the rest of my life. They'll be blessing me. They'll be praying for me. They'll put my picture on the wall. They'll make parades for me. If I live, it's not a Shemagegi who comes to build houses for my picture. My wife will spit on me, this and that, not enough money, you know. Why is it worth living? So, not unusual. It's not a parsh in the Torah. It's not considered surviving a divine test. No, all these guys give up their lives. All of them. They put on the suicide belt and they'll blow themselves up. That is not a divine test. I'm sorry, that's cowardice. That's cowardice or craziness. Or believing in a cause. So,
In Spain, were we taught to give up our lives rather than convert?
Absolutely. And that was the fire of the Moranos, the Auto de Fe. There's a wonderful book that someone in the class recommended me called Incredible, which is the story of Yossi Wallace, one of the founders, CEO of Arachim, whose ancestor was the last Jew to be burned auto de fe in the island of Mallorca in the 1600s, and they let him go back. The Inquisition allowed him to go back and check the records, and then he said Kaddish for them in company of the whole town came and assembled, and he said Kaddish for them and so on and so forth. And they found that there were about 20,000 Mallorcans who are Jews descended from Moranos who never even married into the Christian families because the Christian families hated them because they were Jews, even though they were converted to Christianity. And he says that Rabbi Nissen Karel, who just passed away, paskined that they're all Jewish, like thousands of them, and some of them came back to Yeshua.
They don't have to go through a conversion process?
Those guys didn't because they had yichus, they had records, marriage records. All the way back. It's an incredible thing. And that was the Psak Halacha. They sent out a team, they sent out a bezdin, they did not need to convert.
And when they were integrated, they were totally separate.
They were not allowed to, They were not. They called them Shweta, which means pigs. They did not accept them. The word Morano became associated with pigs.
That's what it means.
Anyway, but something else happened, and this happened on the first day of Parshas Noach. I think that's significant. And I'll tell you why. Backtrack 1 year ago, first day of Parshas Noach. What happened? Does anybody remember? Last year I gave a shiur called Kava Noach, as in Judge Kavanaugh. What was his name? Judge Kavanaugh, Supreme Court Justice, was confirmed last year on the first day of Parashas Noach. It was a Saturday, and over here it was already Motzei Shabbos, 7 hours later. 7 hours later, it was Aleph Parashas Noach. Why is that significant? What's the message of that? It's very simple. It's something very powerful. And I think that's the message we have to understand, especially Parashas Noach. Noach was given the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Alright, what are they? Number 1, no idolatry. Number 2, no stealing, no theft, no adultery, right? Gilui Arayos, Shvichus Damim, and Avodah Zarah, which became the core part of the human morality. As we said, it's evolution spiritually, but the original spirituality of man was 6 mitzvahs. 6. Gilui Arayos, Shvichus Damim, Avodah Zarah. Correct? You with me? Then, in addition to that, dinim, that there had to be law and order, and the implementation of these rules. In other words, if you are against idolatry, if you are against, Gilui Arayos, etc., you need some sort of system of enforcement. So, by definition, the 4th mitzvah is to enforce those rules, but then other rules. One of them being,
No eating from the limb of a animal.
which is the 7th mitzvah, which only came in only was given to Noah, according to the Rambam, Adam Arishon. And this really is what the Rambam is saying, that there was an evolution. The Rambam explains mitzvos evolved. The first 6 given to Adam, the 7th given to Noah, which is Avram and Achai, that you cannot destroy animals, right, for your own pleasure, even though they're allowed to eat them, but they're not allowed to torment them. Take a limb from a live animal, for example. But there was also a couple of other mitzvahs. What were the 3 other mitzvahs that are included? Well, we said dinim. You have to have an enforcement system. You have to have rule of law. 2, birkat Hashem. You are not allowed to what? To curse God. So that means that you have to have a relationship with Hashem that is the source of your moral code. You hear? That your moral code is not man-made. Because Birkat Hashem means you curse or reject God. You may have the exact same moral code. In fact, Rabbi Yaacov Weinberg suggested that Hammurabi, right, was who? Was Nimrod. Nimrod and Hammurabi. Rabbi Yaacov Weinberg's theory is that Nimrod is Hammurabi. He made also a code, the code of Hammurabi. It's also, about cows goring oxes and all that. Hammurabi was an Assyrian ruler, and we know that Nimrod, the Pasuk tells us, that he established his kingdom in Ashur, not far, and Ashur is Assyria, which is really Iraq. It's western Syria, Iraq. Ironically, the same place where this guy was killed.
Mesopotamia, right?
Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's officially Iraq, but probably is. And he wrote one of the earliest moral and legal codes, not moral, but legal codes known to man. And it was written law. And they said that he said